He went unnoticed at first, in a place where thousands of people pass by every hour, where footsteps echo non-stop and announcements never cease. He just blended in. He slept on hard plastic chairs. He washed up in public restrooms. He ate the same simple meals day after day. And for a very long time, nobody asked why. His name was Mehran Karimi Nasseri. In 1988, he landed at Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris with a simple plan: travel to the United Kingdom and start a new life. But that journey never began. Somewhere between one security checkpoint and the next, his documents vanished. No passport, no visa, no country was willing to claim him. The authorities couldn't send him back to where he came from, but they couldn't let him enter France either. So, he stayed. Not for a night, not for a week, but for years. At first, he was certain it was just temporary, a simple misunderstanding, a bureaucratic mistake that would be cleared up in a few days. He slept lightly, always ready to grab his belongings and leave at a moment's notice. But days turned into weeks, weeks stretched into months, and the airport slowly transformed into something else entirely. It was no longer a place of transit, it became a place of existence. He learned the daily rhythm of the terminal. He knew when the cleaning crews arrived. He knew exactly when the cafes closed for the night. He even figured out which benches were the warmest in the winter. Travelers rushed past, their faces a blur of excitement and stress. Seasons changed outside the giant glass windows. Governments rose and fell, but he remained an invisible fixture, yet always there. He started to write in a small, worn-out notebook. His thoughts, his memories, his observations of the world passing him by. He read newspapers left behind on empty seats by passengers, following global events from discarded headlines. Outside, history was unfolding at a breakneck speed. Inside Terminal 1, time seemed to slow down to a crawl. Years passed. 1, then 2, then 5, then 10, and slowly, something strange happened. The airport stopped feeling like a prison. It became his world. The airport staff became his neighbors. They would bring him food, books, and sometimes, just a moment of conversation. He became a kind of local legend, the man who lived in the terminal. His story was so unbelievable that it inspired a major Hollywood movie, The Terminal, starring Tom Hanks. He even received a small fortune from the film rights. But by then, the outside world felt alien. The airport was his home. The sounds of rolling suitcases and boarding calls were his normal. He was safe there. In 2006, after 18 years, a health issue finally forced him to leave the airport. He had become a free man, but freedom was a world he no longer recognized. He had spent nearly 2 decades in limbo, a man without a country, living in a place meant only for passing through. His story is a powerful reminder of how easily someone can fall through the cracks, and how human beings can adapt and find a home in the most unlikely of places. At some point, waiting stopped being a temporary thing. The idea of leaving tomorrow, or the day after, just disappeared. Mehran Karimi Nasseri stopped counting the days. He stopped because, inside the airport, time didn't work like it does for the rest of us. There were no real mornings or nights, just a constant hum of light and noise. His world was Terminal 1. He chose a corner there. It wasn't chosen for comfort, but for its predictability. Routine became his anchor in a sea of transience. Every single day followed the exact same pattern. He'd wake up just before the morning rush of travelers. He would fold his blanket with a quiet precision. Then, he'd wash his face in the same restroom sink he'd used the day before. Breakfast wasn't a choice, but a circumstance. It came from one of the airport cafes, paid for with small amounts of money sent by supporters who'd heard his story, or from aid organizations that offered what little they could. Through it all, he was polite, incredibly calm. He never raised his voice, never demanded more than what was offered. Over time, the airport itself began to adapt to him. Some of the long-term workers started to recognize the quiet man in the corner. Security guards would give him a small, respectful nod as they did their rounds. The cleaning staff, in a silent gesture of kindness, would sometimes leave newspapers near his spot. A few of the shop employees even learned his name and would greet him. But to the millions of travelers who rushed past, he was invisible. They were all focused on their destinations, on their departures, on the futures they were flying toward. Mehran, in that moment, had none of those things. And yet, strangely, he wasn't angry, he wasn't bitter. He filled his days, which stretched into weeks, then months, then years, by reading. He consumed books on philosophy, economics, and history, devouring knowledge as if it were the most nourishing meal. He wrote constantly, filling notebook after notebook. In the world of those pages, he wasn't a man stuck in an airport. He wasn't homeless. He wasn't lost. He was a thinker, an observer of humanity, a scholar of the human condition, with a front row seat to its endless comings and goings. Occasionally, journalists would seek him out, intrigued by his bizarre situation. They'd ask the obvious questions. Why don't you just leave? Why don't you accept the help being offered? His answers were always the same, delivered with that unshakable calm. He would explain that he was waiting for his paperwork to be corrected, waiting for the system to acknowledge its mistake and restore his identity. But deep down there was something else at play, something more complex. Think about it. Outside the airport, life is a chaotic storm of choices, responsibilities, and risks. You have to decide where to live, what to do, who to be. It's overwhelming, but inside the terminal, his life was defined. Food would appear, shelter was a given. No one demanded anything from him. In a strange, almost paradoxical way, freedom had become simpler within those glass walls. He was free from the burden of choice. And so, the years slipped by like departing planes. 1 year turned into 5, then 10, then 15. With each passing year, the outside world, the world he was supposedly waiting to re-enter, felt more distant, more alien. The airport, this place of limbo, had unintentionally given him something he hadn't had before: stability. It had become his home, his sanctuary, his entire world, a predictable, safe existence in the middle of a world defined by constant motion. At first, he was invisible, just another quiet figure in a corner of the terminal, lost in the constant flow of hurried travelers. But airports are strange places, full of arrivals and departures, and stories don't stay hidden forever. One journalist noticed him, just a quick glance, then a longer look. Soon, another journalist started asking questions, and then the stories began. Newspapers splashed his face across their pages with dramatic headlines. They called him a mystery, a tragedy, a curiosity, the man who lived in an airport. Mehran didn't correct them. When they asked him questions, he answered carefully, slowly, as if every single word mattered, as if each syllable was a piece of a puzzle he was still trying to solve. The world's attention turned to this small corner of Charles de Gaulle Airport. Cameras followed him as he pushed his luggage cart through the halls. Travelers would stop and take photos, sometimes asking for selfies. Some would press money into his hand, while others offered genuine help, bringing him food or a book. It wasn't long before the official world took notice. Lawyers came forward, their briefcases full of papers and promises. Human rights groups made impassioned speeches about his case. Government officials arrived, assuring him they had solutions. They all told him the same thing: you can leave, we can fix this. But fixing things, as it turned out, wasn't so simple. It meant making choices. It meant deciding where to go, which country would take him, which identity would he claim. And for the first time in years, that prospect genuinely frightened him. You see, the airport had become more than just a shelter from the rain and cold. It had become certainty in a world that had offered him none. Outside, beyond the automatic doors, the world expected things from him. It demanded documents, a history, a destination. But inside, here in this limbo of glass and steel, the world only observed. He was a fixture, a landmark, a part of the airport's unique ecosystem. And then there was another truth, a quiet one that nobody really talked about. As long as he stayed, he existed. He was Sir Alfred, the man from the papers, the star of a strange, unfolding story. If he left, he feared he would become just another refugee again, another nameless face in a crowd of millions, his story dissolving back into silence. Here, he was someone. He had become a symbol of borders and the arbitrary lines we draw on maps, a symbol of bureaucracy and the Kafkaesque nightmares it can create, a symbol of modern exile, a man caught between nations, belonging to none. And symbols, well, they don't move easily. They become rooted in the place that gave them meaning. So he stayed. For 18 long years, he stayed, not because the doors were locked, not because he couldn't leave, but because leaving meant losing the only place, the only identity that had never truly rejected him. It meant stepping out of the spotlight and into the vast, uncertain world, a world that had long ago forgotten how to find a place for him. The story of Mehran Karimi Nasseri is a powerful reminder of how complex our ideas of home and belonging truly are. It's a story that asks us what it means to be a citizen, not just of a country, but of the world. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, and if you found this story as fascinating as I did, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content just like this. See you in the next one. Years flew by. Outside the glass walls of the terminal, seasons came and went, but inside, time seemed to stand still. Mehran Karimi Nasseri grew older. His dark hair turned to grey. His once brisk walk slowed to a shuffle. But his makeshift bed, his small corner of the world, remained exactly the same. The world outside was transforming at a breakneck pace. Airports became fortresses of security. Borders hardened into invisible walls, and passports became the ultimate keys to movement. Yet, through all of this, he remained a man in limbo, a ghost in the machine of global travel. Then, after nearly 2 decades, the moment everyone had been waiting for finally arrived. He was offered legal permission to leave. A country had accepted him. The official documents were drawn up, the bureaucratic hurdles cleared. The doors that had been sealed shut for so long were finally swinging open. But when that long-awaited moment came, he said no. He refused to leave. It wasn't because he had come to love his strange confinement, or because he no longer craved freedom. It was because the freedom being offered demanded something he felt he could no longer give. Starting over from scratch. Think about it. For 18 years, that airport terminal had given him something incredibly rare in our modern world. It was a place where no one cared about his job title, his nationality, or what he was supposed to be. There were no societal expectations, no pressures to conform. He was free from the labels that define us all. He could simply exist. In a strange, paradoxical way, the terminal had become his sanctuary, a bubble where he was defined only by his own presence. He was just the man who lived at the airport. This fragile peace, however, couldn't last forever. Eventually, his health began to fail, and the decision was made for him. He was taken out of the terminal not as a triumphant traveler, finally reaching his destination, but as a patient on a stretcher. The airport didn't say goodbye. Airports never do. They are places of hellos and farewells, but they have no memory, no sentiment. They are transient spaces for transient people, and Mehran, their most permanent resident, was gone. He spent his final years in a care facility. The vast open expanse of the terminal was replaced by a small room with 4 solid walls that didn't move. When he passed away, there were no breaking news headlines, no cameras flashing, no curious crowds. It was a quiet, unceremonious end to a life lived entirely between borders, in the no man's land of international travel. And maybe that's the real story here. It's not just about a man who was trapped in an airport for 18 years. It's a story about the world we built, a world where our very sense of belonging can depend on a few pieces of paper, where our identity is tied to a flag. It's a story that makes you wonder if sometimes the weight of freedom, with all its demands and expectations, can feel even heavier than the walls of a prison. Thank you for watching.